All right. We are in part 3 of our series on TV and media. Y'all remember part 1? We talked about the cultural grooming and how the enemy is using TV and media to groom this culture. And that's just a simple fact. The things that are going through the televisions, the shows, the influences that we're seeing, especially on the young ones, guys, we have to have eyes to see. We have to understand the enemy is using those things. Shows for little kids that are promoting transgender and gay and pride stuff, and that these little ones, they don't know the difference. We're seeing all kinds of filth come through the television sets. Stuff now that is in regular television programming that 20 years ago would have not come out because it was rated R. And yet now that stuff comes out. Language that used to not even be considered appropriate in just regular TV, now it's said bluntly on TV. And it's a gradual deconstruction. It's almost like it's just breaking us down. The enemy has been breaking down the culture until the point will come one day when they'll be able to show whatever they want and say whatever they want, and for everybody to see it. And so we really need to be alert for that. Part 2, last week we looked at love and romance. And to show you, what is the enemy doing? He's attacking the foundation of the church. Well, how? Through TV and media, he is influencing this culture to think of love and romance in a way that is completely opposite of what God teaches. So that when those young people start looking for love and romance, they're going to do it according to the culture's definition. A love that God says that's not love, and yet that's what they seek. And so they confuse love and respect and dignity with sexual promiscuity and degradation. They confuse it with it's all about me and me being happy and satisfied versus the love that God teaches, which is sacrificial. Agape love is sacrificial love. It doesn't mean unconditional love. Sacrificial love means that you give of yourself. That's real love. So we saw shows and television series that promote all this garbage that confuses our young folks to think of love and romance in something that it is not. And tonight, we're going to look at TV and media part 3. But before I do, if you'll show that image, brother, I want to thank our sister Veronica. She's back with us, and she's already back to work. But she generated a summer, you said it was like a summer image, but I love it. It's a new image for New Spirit Church, and I love that because it just gives us an image of hope and a reminder of what we're doing here at the Life of the Church. And so I wanted to thank you for that new image. I love that. And that kind of plays into the start of this series here, because what we're looking at now, TV and media, part 3, is anger and violence. Would you say that there's anger and violence in this world? Everywhere. Everywhere. It's terrible. And whether you see it in the news or in TV or shows or whatever, anger and violence sells. I remember 20 years ago, 30 years ago, whenever I watched the news, there would be like feel-good stories. And I don't know if you've ever heard that statement. In the media and in the news outlets and TV and journalism, there's what's called feel-good stories. Well, what are feel-good stories? It's stories that are meant to uplift and encourage. Those are practically gone. And if you research it, the reason they're gone is because they don't sell or they don't garner as much attention as the terrible stuff. Which is why now when you turn on the TV and you're looking at the news, it's all bad news. And the first thing I want to tell everybody out there, you got to be careful how much of that you eat. Right? Because I know that, hey, I like to be caught up with the news. I like to be caught up with what's going on. Social media, I kind of want to know trends. As a pastor, I don't want to be ignorant of the culture around me because I got to teach that. I got to say, hey, watch out for this. Notice this, and don't be fooled by that. But whenever I see it, and there can be enough of that, it unsettles my spirit. I'm like, wow, man, this world is in bad shape. And I can get very negative, and it can even affect my spirit. So be very careful how much of that you consume, and especially in the area of anger and violence, because this culture, this Everything in TV, everything in the media is about anger and violence. Go to Matthew 24, verses 3 through 14. Matthew 24, verses 3 through 14. And remember, if you have, those of you online, if you have comments, questions, please chime in. Matthew 24, 3 through 14. Everybody there? Now, here, Jesus begins to talk about the signs of the end of the age. I'm not saying that I think we're in the end of the age, but I think we're pretty close to it. I think we're seeing signs of the end of the age. When we're talking about speech, about the building of the third temple, for example, something that was a sign of the end of the times, when we're seeing worldwide warfare and all these things that are happening, and we're seeing the culture get to the point that it's gotten, we live in a culture that is much more wicked than Sodom and Gomorrah ever were. And you know what happened to Sodom and Gomorrah? When Los Angeles is the #1 producer of pornography throughout the world, when we look at places like Las Vegas, where it says, what happens in Vegas? What's the last part of that? Stays in Vegas. These are all things that the culture is now practicing, and you're seeing all kinds of just craziness come out nowadays. It does give me a vibe of that. Well, notice what Jesus says about the signs of the end of the age. It says, as he sat on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, so this is a private conversation. Okay, he's sitting there with his disciples, a private conversation, saying, tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? What's it going to look like, Jesus? Verse 4, and Jesus answered them, see that no one leads you astray. For many will come in my name, saying, I am the Christ, and they will lead many astray. Just recently, did you see this knucklehead that came out with the little hoodie or whatever and says, I am now the Antichrist, I am the fulfillment of Muhammad, and I am this, of that, whatever. Yes, he's making himself to be the Al-Mahdi, the fulfillment of that. But he's not only making himself the fulfillment of the Islamic prophecy as the Islamic Messiah, but he's saying, all you Christians out there, you hear me too, because I'm the fulfillment of all things. And so we're seeing this. And of course, I don't want to give this knucklehead any more of my time. I mean, there's just, but there are people like that already doing this. Verse 6, and you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. And see that you're not alarmed, for this must take place, but the end is not yet. My friends, we've been through 2 world wars, and I can tell you, probably through both of those, it must have felt like the end of the world to the people living in that time. So we have to be humble. It's like, oh, you look at all these wars. Like, man, we've been fighting each other for thousands of years. It's like, that's just our nature, right? Verse 7, for nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines and earthquakes in various places, and all these are but the beginning of the birth pains. And that's what we've seen. All this destruction, all of these things. Now, end scene 1. Do you have a new paragraph starting in verse 9? How many of you have a new paragraph? How interesting. What does that mean? It's almost like a transitional new thought. So these are the beginnings of the birth pains. Now, notice what he says in verse 9. What's the very first word you should have there? Then. See this? Now, okay, now after seeing all this, verse 9. Then they will deliver you up to tribulation and put you to death. Did you know that there are more Christians that die today than that they ever did at the height of the Roman Empire? Did you know that every year there's an estimate of about 6,000 Christians that are brutally murdered and throughout the world? And now we're kind of sheltered, and what happens with the American church is we're so engaged with what's happening with the American church, but we're not the American church. If we're a true Christian church, we're the world church. It should bother you what's happening in Africa. It should bother you what's happening in China, because they're your brothers and sisters too. We are a worldwide church because the gospel belongs to the world. And when we become so close-minded with our own culture, what happens is we become blind to the things that are happening outside. So verse 9 says, they're going to deliver you up to tribulation and put you to death, and you will be hated by all nations for my name's sake. My friends, don't tell me that that's not something that we're not seeing, right? And by the way, if you haven't noticed in Europe, they're already placing, in places like England, that if you preach the gospel, you can be arrested. Silent prayer. If you pray just to yourself, if you're praying, you can be persecuted. You can't do anything public that demonstrates the Christian faith. This isn't in North Korea or China. This is in England. This is in Europe. My friends, we're getting to the point where this statement in verse 9 is becoming very much a reality. And I got a bread in the oven working on this one. So you're going to hear a whole lot of that. But we need to be aware of this. And we need to pray for the world church. Verse 10. And then many will fall away and betray one another and hate one another. And many false prophets will arise and lead many astray. Are we seeing this? And because lawlessness will be increased, notice the second part of verse 12. The love of many will grow cold. Remember, the study tonight is anger and violence. There will come a time when the love of many will grow cold. And I want you to think about that statement. Verse 13. But the one who endures to the end will be saved. Remember last Sunday I was talking about the remnant that Isaiah introduces. This is the remnant he's talking about. But the one who endures to the end will be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom will be proclaimed throughout the whole world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come. So let me ask you, when Jesus says in the last days, the love of many will grow cold, what does that mean? And if you can, if not, I'll say it for you, but we do have a microphone. What does it mean when Jesus says the love of many will grow cold?
I think that because in our nature, we'll have that mindset of, well, I don't deserve this. Now I have to give back. It's that revengeful mindset. Like, I've had enough. Now I'm going to take it into my own hands and handle it my way.
Yeah.
And so now there's no mercy. I think that's what it means is when, right, there'll be no more grace in people's hearts, like Steve said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People will not, and this will be in the church too. People won't know how to show grace. They won't be patient and loving, right? Okay, very good. Oh my goodness, did you see my notes? No, she didn't. This is a sign that you and I, this is scary. We're becoming one mind. I know, and I'm insane. Yes, that's the word I was actually looking for, and you nailed it. What is apathy? I don't care. But these people are dead. It's not me. Did you not see, I think it was in a Florida university, there was a shooting, and a student there walks by with their Starbucks, and there's a girl laying on the ground. She's been shot. She's bleeding to death, and she takes a selfie of that girl there, and she walks by. Doesn't stop, doesn't hold her hand, doesn't put pressure on the wound, isn't crying, she walks by. Y'all think I'm kidding? Look it up. Think about it. This woman was walking by. There was an active shooter. People had been shot. And this girl is a student in the university. One of her very own is on the ground. She's bleeding to death. And she walks by. Could you do that? You're in a town. Let's say you go and you're somewhere here in San Antonio. And you hear shots and everything. And you're like, oh my goodness. You go under a tree. And there's all this commotion. And you hear sirens and everything. You walk out there. And there's a person laying on the ground, a young girl, and she's like this, and she's bleeding all over. And you walk by, and you go, and the thing that comes into your mind is, I'm going to take a phone, and I'm going to walk by this person who's dying, and I'm going to take a selfie of this person laying on the ground. Apathy. I don't care. When we get to the point, and this is exactly what the enemy is doing with anger and violence in the cultural grooming of the United States and really throughout the world. If I can get people to where they no longer care about their neighbor. Jesus, what is the thing to do? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. And the second one is just like it. Love your neighbor, not a lot, not a whole lot. Love your neighbor as yourself. How much do you love yourself? A lot? Love your neighbor that way. The culture is being groomed to be apathetic. And that is what Jesus means when the love of many will grow cold. When this culture simply won't care about each other. And they don't care what happens across the world. They won't care what happens across the nation. They won't care what happens across their town. They won't even care what happens across their own street. And that's the culture we're in now.
Full agreement of apathy, but maybe even a bit of desensitizing too. I'm guessing you're the get
Yes, desensitizing falls right into that. We are being engrossed in all this anger and violence, and we're being oversaturated to where we're desensitized to it. And the value of human life now has been diminished. There was a time in World War II when there were so many dead bodies in Russia because of the war, the Eastern Front between the Nazis and the Russians, that they were moved aside to the side of the road. And you see kids riding their bikes, and there's dead bodies there on the side of the road, and they're just riding their bikes or they're walking by. They're just dead bodies now. And it gets to the point where you realize that was a living person. They had dreams. That's somebody's son. That's somebody. That's a father to somebody. That's somebody who mattered intensely to God. And that's the culture that's being happened. That's why this is an important topic. It's more, my friends. The reason I'm talking about, listen, I'm not trying to tell you today, oh, don't watch movies with action and violence and stuff, because I understand you enjoy your movies and these kinds of things happen. But I want you to open your eyes and understand that it's more than just, hey, it's an action movie. But it is a cultural grooming that is desensitizing our culture to the point to where we don't really care about human life anymore. And when we get to that point, we're in trouble. And so we have to understand, like, oh, listen, this may be TV or whatever, but I know that this does not jive, or it doesn't square with what God teaches me. So those are things that we have to understand. Think about this. Think about a living creature, something that's alive. If something is alive grows cold, what does that mean? It's dead. You come up to somebody, you touch them, they're cold. They're lifeless, right? That's actually what that word means. The love of many will grow cold. It means loveless. You see, a lot of people think that hatred and anger is a deliberate, I hate you. I deliberately am pointing at you, and I want bad things to happen to you. And we think that that's what hatred is. Not so, according to the Lord. Hatred is lovelessness. The absence of love is hate. See what I mean? And when we have no love for somebody, you say, I don't hate them. Yeah, but you don't care about them. You don't care about them. That is, according to God, that is hate. When, let's say, a husband and wife, they get into a huge fight and they hurt each other, and we start saying things just to hurt the other person, and we don't care how that other person feels, we're hating that person. When Jesus says, anybody who says, raka, to their neighbor, to the person, which means you fool, he says it's liable to the fires of hell. I don't know if you think that's serious or not, but to me that sounds pretty serious. But when we speak in this way, when we spew hatred towards one another, we might say, well, I don't hate them. I was just mad and I said this. But that's lovelessness. The absence of love is hate. And so it's like this, and I've said this before. What is darkness? How is darkness defined? It's the absence of light. There is no such thing as darkness. This is scientifically proven. You can say, okay, how much darkness is there? No, you can't measure how much darkness there is. All you can measure is how much light there is or there is not. The definition of darkness is measured by how much light there is, right? Cold. How do you determine cold? It's the absence of heat. So, how cold is it? Well, it's actually determined by how little or how much heat there is. How do you measure hate? By the absence of love. See, the culture isn't aware of that. For them, hatred is when I deliberately do something to somebody else, when I do something bad to somebody else, then I'm hating on them. No. That's not how hatred is measured by God. It's the absence of love. And so if I'm treating people, even those closest to me, with an absence of love, then I'm hating on them, according to what God says. I see the brains are turning. That's good, but questions or comments or anybody confused about anything? I see some heads turning, and I'm also seeing some guilt, like, I need to work on that. Good. That's what this is about. All right, so it's hard to be peaceful when the culture promotes anger, right? It's hard to be self-controlled when the world elevates violence and sometimes even rewards it. And the culture today promotes anger and violence as a sign of strength, not as a problem, but as a sign of strength. It's sometimes even something attractive. When you look at the movies where the hero is an action star, whenever they lash out and beat somebody up or shoot them or do whatever, the person is seen as somebody strong and admirable. Ooh, I want to be like that. And what are they doing? They're hurting and destroying other people. And a lot of times they're hurt themselves. In today's age, for example, domestic violence and road rage, they're at an all-time high. Domestic violence is at an all-time high. Road rage is at an all-time high. You know what? And tell me this. This is a perfect example. Something that's very trendy in TikTok and YouTube and everything. What is instant gratification, or better said in the social world, instant karma? You ever heard that statement in social media? And they'll even say, oh, that's so satisfying. What is it? What is instant gratification or instant karma in social media? What does that mean? Like if you see an instant karma video.
Something bad happens to you immediately.
Not in the social world.
If someone does something bad to someone else, and then immediately it's gratifying to see them get in pain or hurt because of what they've done. So it's
Yes.
almost like a revenge, like a satisfying revenge. I guess.
Yes, that's it. So for example, a person's walking the crosswalk. These are videos. Well, a person's crossing the crosswalk and the car comes up, and I guess this person was upset because they felt like they came to too fast a stop. And the guy comes and they start making hand signals and pointing at them, angry. And then they're so distracted by that they walk across the street and bam, walk face first into a metal pole. Boom. And then you hear the driver start laughing. Go, oh, that was so satisfying to watch. The guy was angry and so forth. And bam, right into the pole. Or you're driving down the road and you'll see somebody pass on the wrong side or cut in or whatever, and then you see the police officer turn on the lights, you're like, yes, and they start clapping. Like, that's instant karma. Instant karma is an event in which a person does something offensive or wrong or hurtful or mean or whatever, and immediately something happens to them. Does that make sense? And so why is that satisfying?
The sense of forgiveness in the soul.
Okay, so the sense of deserving.
Of being fair.
Okay, being fair. Okay. Anybody else? We want vengeance. We want revenge. If somebody does something and we see them hurt, we smile and we celebrate. There are people on social media who have gone and they've said something stupid or they've done something bad. And then it goes viral. And so what does the internet world do? They attack that person. To the point to where that person, what they want to see, they'll contact their employer. They'll contact like there's people who have a business or whatever. They'll leave all of these 1-star reviews. They'll call there's this one, for example, this one video where a woman was making fun of mental health, men's mental health. And the video post went viral, multiple millions of views, where the woman is dancing and making sounds, and it says, when it's time to for a moment of silence for men's mental health, and she's dancing and laughing. She's basically, it was a terrible video. It was in poor taste. It's making fun of men's mental health when we know that there are thousands of men that suffer from this, and we lose lives like that all the time. So the backlash was so bad that she deleted all of her TikTok, all of her Instagram, all of her social media, Facebook, everything. She deleted everything. They went after her employer. People have lost their jobs. They've lost their reputations. And it was so bad, then whenever they couldn't reach her, they went to the sister. And they went to the other family members. And the sister came out, and she says, man, I've gotten thousands of hate mail and hate messages and death threats. What did I do? It's my sister. She goes, it was bad what she did. Our family doesn't stand for that, but please, I mean, and then they went after the parents. And what do we want to see? I mean, this is the kind of culture that we live in. What do we want to see? I think that's the kind of culture that they want to see her dead. And maybe even then still not satisfied. No, it's still not enough. Let's go into the afterlife and kill her there again. There is this sense of anger and vengeance that becomes almost like a mob mentality. And I'm telling you this because it is swarming through the internet, it's swarming through media, and if you're not careful, you can get caught up in it.
Brother, I'm glad you mentioned this, because what's sad is the world we live in now is they'll find any little thing and use that to kill someone, basically. So you know, a comment was made, they want him dead, just like you were mentioning earlier. You know, and back then it was, you know, when me growing up, if someone said something bad about me, you know, me and him would hash it out, right? But now it's like, man, you say something bad about me, it's like my whole family is against them, or not me personally, but you know, and you know, my dad's gonna kick your dad's butt, and all this, you know, all this hate that's behind it. And then you got people now where, you know, something that's out of like a doctor's hands per se, right? If a doctor couldn't save someone, they want to go after that doctor. It's like, hey, I'm only limited to, you know, it's like the dumbest excuses just to find vengeance, violence, hatred, and even to a point where death is involved.
Yeah, there's been people that have committed suicide over social media pressures. People just committed suicide. Yeah, that's the comment about the Joker. That's right. That's a comment from Batman and on the Joker. This idea that some people just want to cause destruction. Yeah, so I just want you to be careful, because I've been on both ends. Maybe not you, but me. I've been on the end where I made a terrible mistake, a terrible decision, and I was praying for the love and mercy of God. I was praying, can somebody show me some grace? And then I've been on the end where it was my job to give grace. And I thank the Lord. I believe that everything that has happened to me up until this point was God preparing me to be a pastor. I really do. I was a principal for years. I got my master's in administration. And that experience has made me a better administrator of a church. He helped me to start a business, and that's helped me to learn how to navigate the finances and the other aspect of church governance. He gave me experience as a teacher for many years, 15 years as a teacher, gave me the skills to develop lesson plans and teach. All those years teaching in the classroom. And of course, the 10 years in seminary helping me to develop my homiletical skills to be able to bring the word to you in a way that honors the Lord. All of those things. But the best training I ever got was not my PhD. The best training was when he absolutely broke me, and I found myself having lost everything because of my sin, and having to stand before the Lord and actually kneel before the Lord and ask if he would forgive me, and to see the consequences of my actions, and having it break my heart and my spirit. that was the best training I could have gotten as a pastor. Because now when people walk through that door, there was a time when I lacked compassion, when I was empathetic to people, because I would just snub my nose and go, well, don't be so dumb, don't do that. And then I have to, but because of that experience, when I see those people, I don't think that. I go, man, there go I, but by the grace of God. There go I. Oh, you know, this person, they got a DWI or they killed somebody, whatever. I go, when I was in college, I used to drive under the influence. Just because I got away with it and I didn't kill somebody doesn't mean I should judge somebody who couldn't. There go I, but for the grace of God. I made stupid choices in my life, but there go I, but for the grace of God, because God preserved me for those things. Breaking me, that was the best education I could have gotten to be prepared as a pastor. And what I'm saying to you is, when I look at some of these videos, the thing that everybody is pushing towards is we want to see vengeance. We want to see justice carried out. But what does God say? Justice is mine. Vengeance is mine, says the Lord, not yours. And we have to be careful, because the trend of this culture is for us to take matters in our own hands. And we just got to be careful. Okay? Questions, comments? Think of two recent examples. Why did Luigi Mangione captivate our culture? What did Luigi Mangione reveal about our culture? What is it about Luigi Mangione that captured this nation's attention? Why was it such a big deal? Why was it such a big news?
I don't know the full, I don't know it too well, but what I did understand was that it had a lot to do with the broken healthcare system.
The broken healthcare system?
How we all know we've all been, you know, maybe a doctor took advantage of us, or we've had that experience.
So a common shared frustration with the healthcare system.
And he was looked up as he was a hero, right?
Yes, so many took him to be as a hero, like basically acting out what many of us have had, our frustrations. Yeah. Okay, anybody else? Okay, if you don't know who Luigi Mangione is, let me tell you. Luigi Mangione was a university student, very smart, very brilliant, and came from a wealthy family. So one of the things that brought mystique upon him was the fact that he came from a privileged family. But the history was that he had experienced back pain, he had experienced injuries, and his experience with the healthcare system had brought him frustration. He felt betrayed, he felt neglected, and he felt like the system had failed him. And all the while, he was seeing these healthcare systems, these companies, these health companies, making billions of dollars, and them getting wealthy off the payments and the money from the people who pay it, and yet those same people being denied their health care. So what does he do? On one fateful night, he goes out and he waits for the president of this one particular health insurance company. He's at a seminar, and he's walking into the hotel, and he takes out a gun and he shoots him at point blank range, and he murders him, he kills him. He escapes, and there's a manhunt for him, and they capture him, of all places, in a McDonald's. And whenever they capture him because somebody reported him there, the wave of people who spewed hate upon that McDonald's, the bunch of thousands of one-star reviews and threats, they were like, and then what does Burger King do? They come out and goes, we don't snitch on anybody. So what you saw was the nation get behind this kid and saying, we understand his frustration. And many calling for the release of Luigi Mangione. Now I want you to think about that. I understand the frustration. My wife and I have been part of that frustration. We've also experienced that. But was it justified for him to come? We're Christians. I'm a Christian before I'm an American or anything else, right? What does the Word of God tell us? Vengeance is mine. He was frustrated. But for him to take a gun and to kill another man over it, whatever protest he thinks he was showing, that was nothing but evil. That was wickedness. But he's been lifted up as a hero because he's acted out on an anger and a frustration that the whole culture experiences and understands. Yes, we share that. But to think that this man shouldn't be held accountable, I mean, that's just a lack of justice and a lack of wisdom. That's one of the reasons why Luigi Mangione reveals something about our culture. He reveals how angry and spiteful and hateful this country is. I guarantee you, if it were announced today, Luigi Mangione has been forgiven of all charges. He's been released. I guarantee you the majority of the people in our culture would be celebrating. Yeah, he raised over $1 million with a GoFundMe because people were supporting him.
But the thing is that they are treating him different. He killed one person, yes, but how many people kill somebody else and they don't treat it like him? So I think that is the anger that they try to this person because he was a CEO, have money.
Yeah. Now, so what Madi Cruz said was, there's a lot of murderers in the prison system. There's a lot of people who have killed. But what makes him unique is who he killed and why he killed. Right? Okay. What about the LA riots? In case you hadn't noticed, and I don't even call them LA riots anymore. Did you know that there was protests here in San Antonio? In Dallas, in Chicago, in Houston, in Austin, they were arrested, I think, 10 or 12 people. It's now everywhere. What about these riots? What do you see there? What are your thoughts? Huh? Okay, so I'll help you. What we see here is, for example, we see one news anchor looking and going. He goes, "Well, this, why are they releasing the Marine Corps? Why are they releasing the National Guard? This is ridiculous. These people are just demonstrating a peaceful protest. It's just a peaceful protest, and the president doesn't like it, and the people don't like it, and that's just wrong. They're demonstrating a peaceful protest." I would like to go and just tap that person on the shoulder, go, "Hey, let me ask you something. If I go to your house and I burn your car and burn your house down, is that a peaceful protest? Would it be okay if people peacefully protest by burning down your house and burning your car?" No. Remember what I told you when I did the whole politics thing. People are going to tell you something. They're going to show you, say, here's a car burning and people doing all this stuff, and they're going to say, "Hey, this is peaceful protest." Now you have two choices. You can go, "Okay," or you can use your own eyes and you can use your own brain that God gave you and go, that doesn't look like a peaceful protest. There's a guy laying on the ground. He just got knocked out. And there's people bleeding, running around with their head. And I see cars burning. That doesn't fit my description of a peaceful protest. We have to have eyes to see. There is anger and violence amok in the streets. Now, I'm not talking about we can talk about the whole immigration stuff and all that stuff later. I'm talking about the anger and violence that's being shown on the streets. When we call that peaceful protests, I'm already understanding I am listening to a news channel that is not giving me the truth. And I don't care if it's Fox or CNN or whatever. I have eyes to see, and I can judge for myself. And I know what's peaceful and what's violent. Brother?
Well, since you touched on that, but peace, my idea that the reason they're going to call it peaceful is because to them, there's been no deaths, which I think I just saw a headline or a thumbnail, like they found a body where the riots were at. But what I will say is, yeah, it's not peaceful because the burning of the car is more than that. But I think they did finally the last night or the night before, but they started looting. And I didn't hear that on the main news.
Yeah, and the looting, that's not being put on the TV because that doesn't fit there. We want to present this in a certain way to you. So don't film that. Don't film the businesses being burned and looted. Film this, film that, film this, so that we can give you a certain narrative.
Yeah, exactly. It's a certain narrative, and it's again. I grew up in California, and it's sad how it's. I mean, funny. I want to say before they never called it protests. When the LA Lakers would win or lose, they would call it a riot. When it was the May Day parades, which turned into the May Day riots, they called it a riot. It's only funny how just these last 5 years, I don't think it was more than that, maybe 6 or 7, that they're just calling these protests, and they're adding that word. Peaceful protest. I don't know which state it was, but it's a headline that people love to use, which is fiery but peaceful. And in the background, you see full-on building, up in flames.
Yeah,
That's
peaceful.
exactly what they're doing.
He said, can I go burn your house down and call it peaceful, right? Marco?
Yeah, these remind me a lot of the protests that were happening in Minneapolis. You remember with the George Floyd. I think you see a media outlet that is using these sort of racial undertones to facilitate a lot of these riots. And you even had the governor of California, calling out United States of America and basically just blaming him for each problem that his incompetence is causing. And so
Yeah.
you have the mayor, the governor, they're talking about the problem, but they don't offer solutions. And
They're part of the problem.
They are.
They're part of the problem. Yeah.
Brother, I wanted to go back to what you were saying about eyes to see and ears to hear. What's crazy is there is a saying now about this riot, we'll call, where there's a lot of people that will say they're burning the flag of the country they want to stay in, but flying the flag of the country they don't want to go back to.
Yeah.
And it's that simple. It's so easy to read, it's so easy to see and hear, but because of the hatred that people have, they support it.
Yeah.
It feeds it.
I was thinking the other day, I was hearing the people chant, Viva Mexico, Viva Mexico. And don't get me wrong, my wife's from Mexico, my parents are from Mexico, have take a lot of pride in my culture, but I was hearing them say, Viva Mexico, and I was thinking, yeah, it's Viva Mexico until it's time to Viva in Mexico. Yeah. And then, no, I don't want to do that. And so I think that there's a problem with this. But let me tell you, the anger, remember, we're talking about anger and violence, right? The anger and the violence is on both sides. Hey, listen, yeah, I vote conservative, but I'm seeing anger and hatred on both sides. And I stand with Christ. That's who I stand with. And so the political shifts and all this stuff, I'm watching it, but I'm standing on the rock of Christ. And I'm looking at it and go, hey, I see anger and hatred on both sides. It's also not right to hate on the immigrants. For the Word of God tells us that we should especially show compassion and mercy to the immigrants. It doesn't mean that we should open our borders and just allow anybody to walk through. We need to be a nation of laws. We need to be a nation of order. We need to have people coming in the right way. But it also doesn't mean that we should hate on them, that we should be loving and we should be merciful, and that the way we handle whatever the deportations or whatever it is, that we need to be considerate and compassionate. These are human beings, and we need to be careful. So when I'm also seeing on the ultra-conservative end is, get rid of it. Well, listen, these are still the people of God, and we need to make sure that they're properly handled and taken care of, that there's compassion, if there's families, the way we treat them. So it needs to be on both sides. And so I'm holding both sides like, hey, on both ends, there is a lack of mercy and grace, and there is a lot of anger and violence. The love of many has grown cold, and what it really means is that there will come a point where our culture, our society, is loveless, lacks that love, and I think we're seeing that. So now that we've kind of done this introduction, and just like last time, before I show you what the culture is teaching us about anger and violence, let's look at the original. Remember, the FBI, when they study the counterfeits, what do first? They become experts in the original. So that when they see the counterfeit, they know the original so well, they go, no. So let's look at the original first. Go to the next slide, brother. What does the Bible say about anger and violence? James chapter 1, verses 19 to 20. Know this, my beloved brothers. Let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger. For the anger of man or humanity does not produce the righteousness of God. That last part, everybody knows the first part of that, but nobody pays attention to verse 20. For the anger of man, of humanity, does not produce the righteousness of God. Oh, I'm a Christian, I love God, I want to serve God. Then why are you so angry all the time? Then why are you so mad all the time? Because the anger of man does not produce the righteousness of God. Have you ever met angry people that are in the church, and you talk to them? It's like you're almost afraid to ask them, "Hey, how you doing?" I hate this, and you'll meet people, and they hate the culture. They'll say, "Well, I hate these things." Yeah, but it produces a hatred of the whole world in a way that makes us bitter and angry in ways that is not productive. So think about what that says. Anger does not lead to the righteousness of God. We got to be careful because, yes, there is a holy righteousness of anger. Everybody knows there is an example of Jesus being angry. What is it? When he flips the tables, right? When he goes to the temple. He's zealous for the Lord. But what we often do as Christians is we allow all of our anger and we just put it under the title of I'm angry for the righteousness of God. So my wife made me mad because she forgot to feed the dogs that afternoon. So I come and I yell at her, whatever, and I say, well, I'm zealous for my dogs. I want to protect them, so I'm angry, so I'm going to be mean at you. Because we find any kind of excuse to justify our anger. Listen, don't insult the righteousness of Christ by comparing some of your anger that is not holy and fitting to God. And we have to be careful because it does not lead to righteousness. But compare this to the world's message. The world's message is, that anger can lead to righteousness. And here's how they say it. If you have a good reason for being angry, then it's okay. Well, anybody can make up a good reason to be angry about all kinds of things. Look at it this way. You know what's a common trend now? And you just look it up on social media. What do people do when they get their order and their order's wrong? And just go one, and there's thousands of videos in Popeyes and in some Mexican restaurant here. Did you know that there was one lady that was arrested and had spent some time in jail and spent some time in community service because she went to a Mexican restaurant and her menudo was not hot. Her whatever, it wasn't good. And she was mad because it wasn't hot enough, it was not good or whatever. Or she may have been actually angry that it was too hot, I can't remember. But here's the point. She was so mad that her order wasn't right, she took it and she threw it into the face of the worker. A suit, basically, right in her face. The woman leaves then, and of course she ends up being arrested and going to jail. You see people fighting. They'll take the food and they're angry and they're throwing stuff, and that's the trend. And what's happening is people are seeing it and they're saying, okay, I guess that's what you do when you're angry about your order. What about, hey, this is wrong, could you do this, and this, and then just wait for the new order to come out? But no, I'm somehow justified to be this angry. It's a stupid sandwich. Like, well, they put mayo instead of mustard. Okay, but the person you're talking to is a human being. Where's the love and the dignity and the respect? And so we got to be careful because that is a trend that's happening now. It's like everything is justified. If we can justify our anger, it's okay. But James says, no, anger does not lead to righteousness. It does not produce the righteousness of God.
I think another thing, which I don't know if it's a side tangent, but the social media perpetrates is not so much that's what I can do, but people, they just have this entitlement with them. And that I would also think with that entitlement comes, they take offense to their order being wrong, and that's them flipping out.
Yes, and that's something else that we see in our culture. Police officer stops somebody, and I remember a day when everybody, yes, sir. I mean, if a police officer stops me, I don't care if he's 19 years old or 20 years old. He's an officer of the law. And the word of God tells me that I must be respectful of the authority of the land. I don't care how old he is. And sometimes, they may be not very professional, but I'm going to show respect because he's in a position of authority. I'm showing him respect not because of him, but because of my fear of the Lord. And so they come in, yes, sir, what do you need? Yeah, I need this, this, and this. And you do what you need to do. Not too long ago, it's probably about a couple years ago, I was just driving down the road. I was headed to the store, and a police officer stopped me. And in fact, I think I was meeting my wife, and I can't remember. I think I was meeting them, going to go meet them for dinner. And I said, hey, I just got stopped by a police officer. I'll be there But I was confused because I was just driving down the road, wasn't doing anything wrong. And the police officer stops, and he's got his hand on his gun. I'm like, what's going on here? And he's like, sir, I turned on the inside light, make it as easy for him as possible. And now, what do you see on social media? Why'd you stop me? And this is stupid. And he says, sir, do you have your license? Yeah, it's right here. Do you need anything else? He goes, do you have any items in the truck? No, don't have anything. If you want to, and he says, would you consent to a search? Absolutely. Yeah, I don't look around, whatever. He says, okay, well, let me just run this real quick, and I'll get back to you. And he ran. And it was inconvenient and everything, but then he comes back, and then he's there. He says, sir, the reason I stopped you was because we had an incident with somebody driving a vehicle matching your description. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, that makes sense. Now, I could say, oh, it's not me. Okay, he's doing his job. So I'm like, okay. He says, so I just need to make sure before I clear you to leave. No, it's okay. You need to check whatever. And of course, a couple minutes come in, and he goes, oh, okay, yeah, you're not the one we're looking for. You're good to go. Well, that was an inconvenience for me because it took about 20 minutes of my time. But I have to understand, I live in a country in which there's all kinds of terrible stuff happening. Maybe some guy beat up a woman or robbed a bank or something, and they're trying to do their job. I have to have eyes to see bigger than my circumstances. And that's the problem with the whole anger and violence in our culture. Anytime we're slightly inconvenienced, our wrath blows up. Somebody tries to, hey, they need to get into the other lane. Oh, I'm going to speed up. No, they can't get in. Let them in. Anytime somebody asks of anything that's slightly inconvenient, we get so angry. We have to stop and say, listen, this road, I'm not the only one that's driving it. There's other people that share the road. You know what? This police officer, if he needs to stop me to confirm who I am, let him do his job. I'm part of a culture and a society in which I need to be responsible and accountable for it. But nobody is willing to see past their bubble. Okay, so my menudo's a little cold, or maybe it's too hot. Okay, well, go and change it out. It'll be okay. But any slight inconvenience, anything, and then we want to stand before God and proclaim that we love him. And as Christians, that simply won't do. Questions or comments?
I love what you said there, brother, because I always tell people, what's the point of getting angry? There's no point in getting angry. It's just going to make the process longer.
Yeah, it's not going to fix anything.
And in your situation, imagine if you were that irate guy, this and blah, blah, and it took an hour and a half, 2 hours.
I think we got our guy here, yeah.
That could have been an hour and 40 minutes of time spent looking for the guy that actually did something wrong. Instead, because you were patient, 20 minutes, boom, done, on to the next. It helped them search for that guy so that the police can do their job. But people just don't realize how much time they spend arguing and complaining, and it just makes matters worse. And then they get even more angrier it's like they're feeding their own fire, they're fueling their own hatred.
Yeah, no, amen. Matthew chapter 5, verse 5, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Meekness is not weakness. Meekness is being in a position of influence or authority or power where you can abuse or hurt other people, but choosing not to do that. But the world promotes violence as weakness. Promotes violence not as weakness, but as strength. And so meekness is saying, listen, I can act this way, but I choose not to. I choose to act in the way of Christ. Meekness is saying, I'm not going to act the way I want. I'm going to act in the way God wants me to act. Psalm 37, verse 8. Yes.
I think that when you're talking about meekness also, it's literally protecting your own peace that Christ gives us. And so when you entertain that, you're destroying that. You're taking that away from yourself.
Yeah, you're going to walk out of that store, you're going to walk out of that restaurant or whatever, and you're the one that's unsettled.
Right.
Now you're the one that's not right with God. That's a great point. Psalm 37, verse 8. Refrain from anger and forsake wrath. Fret not yourself, it tends only to evil. It tends only to evil. That's all it leads to. So let me ask you something. If I were to take the 10 people that most know you, okay, kind of just take a few seconds. If I were to say, okay, I'm going to take the 10 people that are most closest to you or most know you, most associated with you. Can you come up with about 10 people, more or less? Okay. Well, maybe people at work. They'll say, okay, who here kind of knows, this person at work? Okay. Your family. Maybe some friends. Okay. Now, if I were to go to those 10 people and I would say, on a scale of 1 to 10, how angry is this individual? What number do you think they would say about you? Hold it up if you think if you don't want to, that's okay. How angry is this individual? I see 3, I see 7.
I think they're wrong, but
3? You think you would get a 3. Okay. It's okay. Way more than 10? So what I'm saying is this. Some people around you might say, they tend to get a little angry sometimes. And maybe when they get behind the wheel and they start driving, oh, they're passionate. I'm not angry, I'm just passionate. And so what happens is we sometimes allow this to consume us. And what I'm trying to explain to you is maybe all those movies and video games and social media, maybe they're having an influence on you. And you just have to. I was watching this one comedy show. And the man comes up, he's the husband, and he comes up, and it's a comedy show. He comes up and he's complaining about, well, you do, and then there's like a slight pause, and she just goes, slaps him, and then walks off. And of course, it's like, I'm like, I wonder how many wives have wanted to slap their husband that way. Like, I've wanted to, and maybe some of that is acting out like, I'm glad I'm enjoying seeing that because I've felt that many times. So a lot of times, these are things that we see on TV. Proverbs chapter 15, verse 1. Proverbs 15, verse 1. A soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. My mom used to say, mijo, y si tienes un menso, hay un menso. Pero si peleas con ese menso, ahora hay dos. Let me translate to you. Son, if there's a fool, that's one. But if you argue with that fool, now there's two. Right? A soft answer turns away wrath. If somebody is being angry, whatever, or unreasonable, and you just start arguing with that person, now there's two unreasonable people. You have to be the voice of reason, and you have to be careful. Sometimes all it takes is just a soft answer.
a long time ago in California, I worked in a pharmacy, and yeah, I had examples of that, of just be courteous, hey, how's it going, even though a customer is mad, at the end, just have a good day, and that just makes them even worse.
Yeah, it does. Sometimes the people that are really angry, if you're just kind, and it makes them even more mad. It's like pouring hot coals over them, right? Well, every marriage needs to hear that. Every marriage needs to hear that. A gentle answer turns away wrath. We've all been frustrated with our spouses. We've all been frustrated with our kids. But a gentle answer turns away wrath. And here's the thing, and I want you to listen to me very carefully on this. A gentle answer turns away wrath, right? Are y'all listening? You know, you're interpreting it maybe probably not in the way that it should be interpreted. A gentle answer turns away wrath. You know how you're interpreting it right now? If somebody comes to me with the spirit of wrath, if I respond with the spirit of gentleness, a gentle answer, then I will turn away that wrath. Right? You know what did you know that this passage has a double-edged meaning? Did you know that? There's the side that you didn't even think about. Somebody comes to you and they're mean, they're rude, they do maybe deserve a slap or a yell. But the gentle answer turns away wrath. See, you're seeing it as if I respond with a gentle answer, I'm going to turn away their wrath. My friends, it also means if I respond with a gentle answer, it will turn away my wrath. The other day, I was driving and a person came across blatantly. I don't know if they didn't see me or what. They just came. I'm pretty sure they didn't see me. and just cut right in front. And there were two cars. It was me and this other car. The other car slammed on their brakes and real mad, whatever. That person kind of freaked out, and they were kind of panicking. I was like, this is exactly what I did. I was like, now I could have been like, maybe I'm going to go around the corner and I'm not going to see somebody, and they're going to honk at me. What would I want? Hey, hey, sometimes you just don't see somebody. But we get so mad, like, well, what if they didn't see you? And so a gentle answer turns away wrath, and sometimes the wrath that it turns away is our own. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. All right. So Ephesians 4:26-27. This one's important. Ephesians 4:26-27. Be angry and do not sin. Now, is he instructing people to be angry? No, you need to be angry? No. And saying in being angry, that's actually what the actual Greek translation is. In being angry, it's a progressive. Okay, so the statement is in the moments when you are angry. In other words, it's acknowledging that there's going to be times when you do get angry. Okay? The reason that's important is because anger in and of itself is not a sin. Be angry and do not sin. Really, the translation should be, when you are angry, don't sin. Well, I thought I'm sinning when I get angry. No, it's what you do with that anger. Okay, I'm angry. Okay, now what? What you choose to do in your anger will determine if it's sinful or if it's righteous or appropriate. Yes, but we got to be careful not to use the anger of Jesus as a justification for us. Jesus was angry for his Father's house. It was a zeal. And what we do is, well, I got mad because that guy interrupted me. So just like Jesus' zeal for his Father, like, no, don't compare that with your anger with this guy who cut you off or your boss who ignored your email. Because a lot of times we forget that anger was a righteous anger. And we assume that all of our anger is equally justified. How much of our anger is really not justified? Some of it is just not, well, I'm angry because I asked for 3 tomatoes and there's only 2. And just like the Lord Jesus, when he went to you got 1 less tomato. Don't compare that with the Jesus' zeal for his house. So sometimes I think we forget that. And so, but I get you what you're saying. But what it's saying here is when you are angry, do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger. What does that mean? I remember one time somebody saying this to me. He goes, every time my wife and we get mad, the reason, because he always wants to resolve it, and the wife was one of those that she always wanted to like take time. Like, no, hey, the sun's going down. Let's go. We got it. That's not what it means. So imagine you get in a fight with your spouse. It's like, hurry, we got 1 hour and 12 minutes to not be angry anymore. What do you think it really means? Do not let the sun go down on your anger. It means not only don't hold on to it. In other words, the anger is not dependent on the other person. Well, I want to fix it with my wife, and I remember talking to her. We got to fix it because the sun's going down. No. You don't need your wife in order to fix your anger. She doesn't even have to be in the same room. You get on your knees, and you deal with that anger. And the mistake that people make, well, she made me angry. No, she didn't. You made you angry. When you say somebody made you angry, you just gave the power and authority of that person over your own life. And I remember when I was a teacher and a principal, I used to say, whenever they used to say, well, they made me angry. So then they control you? Well, no. That's what you just said. So we have to be careful because a lot of times we don't interpret our anger the right way. And all of this is indicative of what the Bible is teaching us about anger and violence. And then notice verse 27, and give no opportunity to the devil. Anger is the footstool of the devil. That's exactly where he can enter. And that is why when people make comments like, well, something came over me, you better pray on what that something was. Because something did come over you. Or when we say that we lost control. Well, I lost control. And have you wondered who gained it? Who did you give control to? If you lost it, who did you give it to? See, these are things that we have to think about because there really is, again, a spiritual element to it. Ecclesiastes chapter 7, verse 9. Anger rests in the bosom of fools. Ecclesiastes chapter 7, verse 9. Anger rests in the bosom of fools, or in the heart of fools. You know what that means? You know what the bosom is? The heart, right? Where do women get pregnant? In the bosom. This is the birthplace. This is where something is born, right? The bosom. Anger rests in the bosom of fools. In other words, when you give birth to anger, this is where it starts. And you say, well, it just happened, or that happened, or this happened. No, it started here. It started in your heart. The anger started here, and everything else was a byproduct of here. In other words, what God is saying is, where it gave birth was here. It was your responsibility. But yet, people will blame everybody else for their anger. Does that make sense? And the final one, Galatians chapter 5, verses 19 to 23. Galatians chapter 5, verses 19 to 23. Now the works of the flesh are evident. Now these are sinful things. These are the works of the flesh. I want you to see how much of this list is associated with anger and violence and rage. Okay? When you hear one, I want you to count it on your fingers. Okay? The works of the flesh are evident. Sexual immorality, impurity, sensuality, idolatry, sorcery, enmity. What is enmity? Angry division. Strife. What is strife? Conflict. Jealousy. Fits of anger. Rivalries. Dissensions. Divisions. Envy. Drunkenness. Orgies. And things like these, I warn you, as I warned you before, that those who do such things will not inherit the kingdom of God. I count 8 out of those that deal with anger and violence and bitterness. But the fruit of the Spirit is the opposite of those things. Love, joy, peace, patience. Do you see how these things battle? They destroy the things of anger and division. Kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Against such things there is no law. Marty had sent me this video about the number one indicator of a healthy relationship. He's a clinical psychologist or whatever. He says, I've dedicated decades of research, and I found that this one characteristic is the defining marker of if the person has this, it is the number one indicator that it's going to be a healthy relationship. He goes, now let me tell you, it's not how loving they are. It's not how happy and joyful they are. It's not how much money they make. It's not what kind of profession. It's not how tall they are. It's not how handsome or good looking they are. You know what the number one indicator of a healthy relationship is? Self-control. The individual who has the ability to manage their emotions is the number one indicator that they are prime candidates for a healthy relationship. And the opposite is true. The person who lacks the ability to control and manage their emotions is the number one candidate for an unhealthy, toxic relationship. That's what it is. That's what this is about. Questions, comments? All right, so now let me ask you. I've got 3 slides to show you now what the world's view is. I'm not in any particular hurry. I don't mind if we looked at this today and then next week we look at the worldly part of it, or we can go through it. It would take me about 10 to 15 minutes, or it could take longer if y'all want to discuss it. What would you like to do? Would you like to stop here, or would you like for me to show you the 3? Let's do it? Okay. And now these don't take very long. because I always want to spend the majority of my time on the biblical aspect of it, looking at the original. All right? So what does the world say? The world says, anger and hate, they're good things, and they're useful. And let me give you some examples. There's a movie in the theaters right now, Ballerina. It's from the world of John Wick. It's about a young woman who devotes her life to avenging her father. Her father was killed, and so her whole life she trains to be an assassin. And so then when she's old enough, she goes and she starts killing the group of people that were responsible for the death of her father. And as she's going through her training, whenever she's training in hand-to-hand combat and they knock her down, whatever, man, she gets back up and you can see she's driven. And whenever she's going through the program, she has a best friend. But one day she goes into her room and the best friend, she's gone. And so she runs into the director's room. Where's Natasha or whatever? Where is she? And she's like, she didn't have it. We moved her to a different section, but she didn't have the killer instinct. And this is what she told her. She says, you have pain. And that's what makes you strong, because you hang on to that pain. And you use that pain. And that's what makes you strong. What does the Bible teach us about our pain? What to do with our pain? To give it to Him. Not so according to the world. No, it's power. And then she says this, as they're training, she goes, use your rage. It's a tool, it's good, it's useful, and it makes you stronger. And that's what the teaching is. Do you see how it goes contrary to what the Bible says? No, take that and you give it to the Lord. You surrender those things. You don't want to live a life of rage and pain. But the world teaches differently. There's a series called The Equalizer. There's been like 3 movies made with Denzel Washington. And the movie is about a man who has CIA training. He was like a black ops operative, so he's like, a super killer. And he loses his wife. She dies. And so he's this broken, sad man. He's lonely. He lives by himself, but he's like this super assassin guy, right, with all these skills. And in the movie, he has friends or people that around his life where he works and stuff, and he sees people who are in need, so he goes and he helps them. So he has this natural desire to protect them. Well, in each one of those 3 movies, some bad guy somehow comes in, and they're basically hurting the weak, or the people who are unable to protect themselves. So he steps in and defends, but he doesn't just step in and defend. He murders them. He goes in and just wipes them all out. And here's the point. He not only takes justice into his own hands, but that very violence, according to all 3 of those movies, heals him. So let me ask you, do you think that's what the Bible actually teaches? If you have anger, if you're sad, right? If you're lonely, whatever, use that, act it out, and you'll find yourself feeling better at the end. If you're angry at that person, go over there and shoot them. Go over there and beat them up. If you have these feelings, if you have these emotions, act on it. And when you get done, you're going to go, oh, man, I feel better, man. That guy's laying there in his blood or whatever. Whew, man, I feel better already. In other words, the message is the end justifies the mean. Does that jive with the Bible? No. You're not going to feel better when you act out on it, and I know, because I've acted out on it before. I've acted out on my anger and my rage. And then when I was done, I didn't feel better. In fact, I felt much worse. I was worse for it. Then there's this other movie called Boy Kills World. And y'all could probably put 1,000 movies up here. In this movie, these are all recent movies. In this one, this young man, there's this group of people who, like these drug cartel groups, they kill his parents. They kill his family. So he's raised in like this jungle village, and his whole life is about training and becoming like an assassin or whatever. And they call it Boy Kills World because he wants to destroy the world. And in there, he's having like an inner dialogue. And so when you're watching the movie, there's a narrator, and as he's going around doing things, the narrator is telling you what's happening. And in it, it says he was finally strong enough, finally old enough to use all of the things that was done to him and to go and to destroy the world. It was time for the world to burn. It was time to destroy the world, and he would take upon his own hands to do it. So let me ask you something. We may say, oh, it's just a movie. Imagine you're a 15-year-old, 16-year-old kid, and you've been bullied at school every day. They made fun of you. You have no friends. Girls laugh at you. They've rejected you. And you feel hurt. You have a lot of anger and rage, and you don't know how to deal with it. Let's say that same kid, let's say their dad is absent. He doesn't even have a father. So he's angry because his father's absent. And he feels neglected by the world, and he feels like the world needs to change, and he feels abused by the world. And he goes and watches a movie that says, this world is broken, and so he's going to destroy this world, and he's going to make it his own. And then he goes and he gets his guns and everything goes, and he just starts murdering everybody. Do you think that would be something dangerous for a kid like that who has anger and rage and doesn't know what to do with it? Did you know that, you know why it's hard to show statistics on school shootings? Because out of nowhere, after like the 90s, before then, it was basically non-existent. The Columbine shooting changed everything in our world. It opened up the eyes to these people, to these kids. Hey, this is an option for you if you're feeling bullied. I guarantee you, every school in the nation, there's bullies and there's kids that are being bullied. And it's a crisis because now it's the norm. Now, you talk about desensitized. Now we turn on the TV, 14 kids killed here. We turn on the TV, 5 kids killed here. We turn on the TV, school shootings there. And we're like, yeah, we're so used to it now.
Brother, when I was younger, I used to be scared of just stealing a piece of candy out of the store because I knew the consequences. And you look at these movies and you see Denzel Washington murdering all these people, never gets caught.
No.
You see this ballerina, doesn't get caught. This kid, boy kills world. Like these people, there's no consequences. So it gives them the idea to start to have that rage and be murderous, but never shows them the consequences.
That's very true. In fact, there's a scene in the ballerina thing where they have like their car chase and they're wrecking each other and they're fighting. It's about a 10-minute scene right in the middle of the city, big open city, and they're shooting each other. I'm like, there are no cops, you know. It's very true because that's not the part that they're going to show you. All right, so in this one we see that the world is teaching in some of these movies that anger and hate are actually good and useful. Use it. It makes you stronger. Hang on to it. Don't let it go. Don't give it to God. In fact, you're going to feel better if you do, and it's the very opposite. Go to the next one, brother. The second lie that the media teaches us, TV and media teaches us about violence and anger, is that violence is the proper response. Take, for example, these 3 movies, and share with me if you've got some. But according to the world, violence is the proper response. Like, oh, you're angry? Yeah, violence is the proper response to it. It's natural. Let it go. In the words of what's the name of that princess? Huh? Yeah, in the words of that philosopher, Princess Elsa, let it go. And no, letting it go is not the right thing. Letting loose. So violence is the opposite of self-control. And we already talked about self-control being one of the highest qualities of the human condition. Take, for example, Roadhouse, there on the left. That's Jake Gyllenhaal. That's a new one. The story is about a former UFC fighter who is down on his luck. He's sad, but then he's recruited by this lady who has a roadhouse or like a bar, and she recruits him to come and save the bar because there's some people that want to take her property. So there's people coming in and they're beating up the clients and everything. So she hires him as a bouncer to protect. So when they're coming in, he's like beating up the people to protect. So he's like the protector of this bar. And the person who wants that bar is this corrupt individual. So he hires or sends this person who's a killer himself, another professional fighter, and then they get into it and they start fighting. Well, what is the message really there? Violence makes us the hero. It gives us control. Because in the movie, there's a certain scene where some bad guys, some biker people come in and they're pushing people and they're making a mess and everything, and everybody's backing up and they're like, we don't know what to do. But then he comes out and they're like, oh, he saved us. And he comes up and he beats them up really bad, gives them a concussion, breaks their arms, whatever. And they're like, and they're all laughing. They're like, oh, and after there, they just love him. Well, what's the message? If you do this, people will love you. Because after that scene happens, everybody comes to respect him. But what's the reality? The reality is, no, if you do this, bad things are going to really happen. It's like, oh, you thought that happens in real life. So violence, or let's better said this, the world teaches that violence gives you some sort of control. It gives you power. Violence does not give you power. Violence is the loss of real power, which is self-control. Blessed are the meek. Anybody recognize the movie in the middle? It was nominated for like movie of the year, won all these awards. Kill Bill is a 2-part movie by Quentin Tarantino about the story of a woman who was trained as like a ninja assassin who is wronged by her lover and by the group of people she worked with. So in that 2-part movie, she's searching for Bill, the guy who wronged her, and that's why it's called Kill Bill. She's looking to kill Bill. And in this movie, she's going around and fighting all these people and killing people to get to Bill. And so she's almost like, huh? Very gory. Lots of blood and all these things. But in it, consistently, one of the things that the director does is that whenever she's fighting and killing these people, the objective is, and if you read his interviews, the objective is to make every kill count and bring, quote, satisfaction to the viewer. Well, think about that. I'm making a movie, a very gory, violent movie. Well, what's your objective, Mr. Director? When the viewer is watching them, I want it to be satisfying to them. I want them to go, oh, that feels good. Okay, now, do I have to explain to you? That is completely opposite of what the Bible teaches. Anybody seen this movie on the right, Sicario? Okay, so that's a 2-part movie, and of course it stars Benicio del Toro, and it's about, in the first movie, about an FBI agent who gets involved in the Mexican cartel war. So she's going around with them, and she's watching, and there's this, what's the name of Matt? What's the name of the actor, Marco? Matt in the movie? You'll remember. In this movie, there's a CIA operative, and he's working to destroy the Mexican cartel. And so Benicio del Toro, who's the main guy in the back, he's part of that team. And what happens is that girl finds out that he's actually a sicario. Sicario means assassin. And what you find is he used to be an attorney, a Mexican attorney, and one of the drug cartel lords murdered his family. So he turned into an assassin and is working with them to seek vengeance. And at the end of the scene, there's a final scene where he finally infiltrates the boss. And he's sitting having dinner, and he's got 2 of his kids. One of them is like 10 years old, and the other one's maybe like 13, 14 years old. And they're sitting there having dinner. He's having dinner with his wife, and he infiltrates. He kills all the guards, and he makes it to that final scene. And as he's there and he's sitting down, he sits down with them with the gun. He makes them all sit there and basically reveals, hey, your end has come. He's going to get his vengeance. And in that conversation, the drug lord says, hey, it wasn't personal. And he's like, but I mean, see, like it was for me. You killed my daughter and my wife. And so he says, now it's time for you to meet God. And the first thing he does is his 2 kids. Here's a 10-year-old and about a 15-year-old kid. Is he shoots them, and then he shoots the wife before he kills the drug lord. When I was there in the movie theater, whenever he shot those kids and he shot the wife, the theater erupted in cheers. And I went, wow. What the director had done is created a narrative to show this guy was justified in his anger. This guy had wronged him. And they cheered whenever these 2 kids and the wife were murdered. And everybody's like, yes! And I'm like, that is exactly the cultural grooming that's happening, where we rejoice in the murder of 2 kids that had nothing to do with it and the wife. But that's the reality of it. So we have to be very careful what movies can do to us. Questions, comments? And the last slide. The last lie is that anger and violence will make you strong. According to the world, violence makes you strong. But violence doesn't make you strong. It actually reveals that you're weak. You see road rage incidents. People get out of the car and they start fighting, and somebody gets knocked out. The person turns around. They're walking all satisfied. That person wasn't strong to do that. That person lacked self-control. The real strength was being able to stay in the car and keep going. That because what are you trying? Who did you prove anything to? So here's some statistics on domestic violence. There are nearly 10 million victims of domestic abuse every year. 10 million. You know what that is? That's one stronger partner abusing the weaker one. Why? Because they think it makes them strong. It makes me have control over my partner. That doesn't make you strong. That reveals that you're a coward and a weakling. If I were to see a man who's abusing his partner, that I don't have respect for that man. He's a weakling. He's a coward. Nearly 25% of women experience domestic abuse at least one time in their life. My friends, do you realize how big that number is? 1 out of every 4 will experience domestic abuse at least once in their life. That's a very serious statistic. Don't tell me that this kind of stuff is not impacting our culture. Only 20% of rapes and sexual assaults are reported. And only 25% of physical assaults are reported. That means 75% out of every 4 assaults, 3 of them won't be reported. And out of rapes and sexual assaults, 80% will not be reported. Don't tell me there's not a problem with this. And approximately 1 in 5 homicides are made by an intimate partner. Out of every 5, 1 of those is done by the person that they were supposedly supposed to trust the most. 1 out of every 5. That's a very scary statistic. Was there a comment that was needing to be made, brother?
Another movie that relates to anger and violence makes you strong is a bunch of the Star Wars movies. Darth Vader, how did he become so strong? All this pain and violence and revenge. He even killed his own wife.
Yes.
Because of his anger. And he accidentally did it.
Yeah.
He did it out of rage and anger. Even betrayed his own master and attempted to kill him.
Yeah, that's a great example because...
And he wanted to rule like the whole world.
Yeah, and Emperor Palpatine, the emperor that he aligns himself with, what does he say? Give in to your anger. But that's a lie from the enemy, isn't it? That's a great example. In the new Star Wars series, Kylo Ren, he kills his dad, Han Solo. And he goes, I know what I have to do, but I don't know if I have the strength to do it. You're going to kill your dad. So he gave in to his darkness, so that's right. That's a great example. Well, The Dark Knight, that was a huge series, 3-part series of Batman. And the very idea of the superhero of Batman is based on this. It's a man who takes vengeance in his own hands. He's afraid of the dark. He's afraid of bats. He gives into that darkness, and then he turns it to exact justice on the streets. The Punisher is even worse. He's an ex-cop who lost his family to bad guys, and then all he does is go and he punishes people who do wrong. That's why he's called the Punisher. And boy, are they creative with the way that he punishes them. And he gets away with it. But he's seen as a hero. He goes around and he sees something, and you say, but brother, those people deserve it. We all deserve to be accountable for our actions. But it doesn't exact in us an authority to do that. Vengeance is mine, says the Lord. And that's why school violence has increased so much. Look at the video game on the top left-hand corner there, guy shooting. There's a video game called Grand Theft Auto. Your objective is to go around and shoot people, beat up prostitutes, steal money, and make your car better, I guess. And, it's Grand Theft Auto. You're going around shooting people, beating them up, and stealing cars. So the video games are getting really, really bad, and it's getting to the point where it's desensitizing kids. Be careful what games you let your kids play. Be careful what shows you let them watch. Just 2 months ago, there were 4 students shot in the Dallas school, top right-hand corner. 4 students shot and hurt in a Texas high school. Guys, when I looked up school shooting, I said, let me just give an example. It was so sad. Hundreds of accounts of school shootings. Not too far from here. What was that? What was the school where all those innocent, Uvalde. Just right down the road, guys. These innocent little kids, because of a person who was mentally ill, exacted this. And here's what I'm saying. You might say, well, yeah, but Pastor, they were mentally ill. But they were groomed and influenced by this garbage that I'm telling you about. That's where they got it from. And the mentally ill are the ones that are most vulnerable. See the kid on the top left-hand corner? That was Ethan Crumley. He killed 4 students in Michigan. He exacted all this anger that he had, and he was not right in his mind or whatever. When they did some research, and they found that he was reported to the parent because he was looking up weaponry and bullets and stuff like that. They found a text message from the mother, and she said to the son, I'm not mad about what you did. You just got to learn not to get caught. And so they found sufficient evidence to show that the mother was very aware of his descending condition. And there's been other cases where parents even gave them the weapons and allowed for them to, ignoring the very real danger. So our culture is getting more and more violent, and these are the things that we're seeing. The bottom left-hand corner, not too long ago, this video went viral. There's a motorcycle guy, got really mad at a car, went over there and flipped him off. So that other car went and hit him and knocked him off the road and injured him severely, and then ran off. And eventually they found the man, and they arrested him. But these are the things that we're seeing in our culture. And movies and media, they're elevating it. And we have to be careful. And if you have kids, especially. Questions or comments?
You're right about media, television, but I would say books to an extent. Tom Clancy, I will say, is one of my favorite authors. Does not necessarily, I wouldn't say military books so much as just, I guess, goes on thinking about terrorism, drugs, and all that. But one of the books that I admit I did like was Without Remorse, and it's one of the side characters, his story, and very similar to the first slide you had with the movies, where he meets someone, they get her clean from drugs, and then she gets caught by drug dealers and is murdered. And it's a story about him going after those drug dealers. And if I'm not mistaken, he actually, in a sense, accomplishes his mission. He was ex-military. The difference, I will say, is not justifying the book, but he is caught by the CIA, and that's how he pretty much gets roped in to the CIA for life. They hold that over him.
Yeah.
But my point is that it's in books too, and I probably could imagine other books that I've read.
It's the repeated story, vengeance. Somebody's been wronged, they're going to get vengeance. They kill everybody, and that's what the story is. And so this is the narrative that the world is pushing. So thank you.
Brother, what I think you're saying here about kids is very powerful. I could still say I'm a new dad because my son's 10 and my daughter's 7. And there's a bunch of empty nesters in church, but when I've had to learn the hard way and realize that when Lexia cries over a doll where the arm pops off and she's crying, I have to remember that's like the world to her, right? So that little thing is the world to her. Same thing with video games, or same thing with movies, or what we teach our kids. Like they're still blind to what reality is, what the world truly is. So when they see stuff like these video games, Grand Theft Auto, and they start playing that, they start seeing that as a normal thing. It sort of normalizes in their brain. So when they get older, this is where the desensitization. You said it. That's where it starts being normalized at that point. You know?
So yeah, just be careful because again, it should never be normal to see violence. It should never be normalized, and those things we have to be careful for. So again, I want to thank you for watching. Again, and I promise I'll do a better job next week of controlling the time management with some of these slides. I think I put too much information, but it was all good. It was all good information. And it could have been a two-part series, but I think this one was hard because this is probably the number one attractor to people when it comes to movies and media. That's what people want to see. And we just have to be careful. And we just have to understand these movies are not teaching what the biblical truth is. So let's go to the Lord in prayer, and I want to thank everybody for watching. Lord Father, I thank you again for this study and the reminder, Lord, of what your word teaches. Give us wisdom to be able to discern and see these things and see them for what they are, Lord Father, that we do not conform to this world, oh God, but that we be set apart, that we be examples of what your love is, and to show the attributes of self-control, godly love, peace, gentleness, and meekness. These are the things of which your Son taught us. Lord, let us go into the world and teach these things, Lord Father, to show to the world the love of God. A world that is filled with anger and violence and hatred so desperately needs to see these things by us as a light to the world. I thank you for this study and all that was shared. In Jesus' name, amen.